Sheriff. You were in service with law enforcement. How many years have you experienced 4th of July as a law enforcement experienced individual in the community?
Almost 40. I've been in law enforcement 38 years, and I could tell you that I worked almost every single 4th of July during my service, and most of that was because it's just such a great holiday, and I love being out there with the people. And you know, what better holiday is there to celebrate?
Well, today we're the Talk Shop 93.5 FM will be celebrating the Declaration of Independence. And at 4 o'clock today, we will participate in a nationwide reading of the Declaration of Independence. And I've never done that. 30 years of broadcast, never done Declaration of Independence on any day of my broadcast career. Today we do it at 4 o'clock, and we do it by the influence of Lisa Kinney. She's running for U.S. Congress in Wyoming, and Lisa, a huge advocate of the Albany County Public Library and education. And she suggested it, and I said, yeah, absolutely. In fact, I was so inclined to give a little educational component that throughout the programming on July 4th, KOCA 93.5 FM broadcast the Declaration of Independence throughout the day and multiple readings throughout the day. And what we heard was, wow, I hadn't heard those parts of that. And there were different lines and sections, and through the entirety of reading the Declaration of Independence, awareness really came to current events. And so anyway, the red, white, and blue, it's in your signs for your campaign for Albany County Sheriff, but it's got to be interesting to compare how was a year ago 4th of July in comparison to this year for you, Darren.
So I think with it being the 250th anniversary of our independence, that brought a special meaning to it. This year, I think that it was a great celebration. I think that Freedom Has a Birthday in the Park was just an absolutely phenomenal event. I think the city did a really, really good job with putting it on. I think that there was a lot more people there this year than there were last year. The engagement, the interaction was just absolutely incredible, at least from our standpoint. And for somebody who has lived overseas and traveled overseas, and people, I think, tend to take for granted the freedoms that we do have here, and tend to forget about the sacrifices that hundreds of thousands of Americans have made so that we can have that freedom.
As you visited with people on July 4th, you saw citizens with youngsters, and those were real special moments, weren't they?
Absolutely. Seeing the kids out there and seeing families together, having a great day, celebrating, eating ice cream, eating cotton candy, and walking around with balloons, and it was an amazing day.
As we, the Talk Shop went through, we started around the sand volleyball area at the west end of Washington Park, close to the band shell, and there were so many people, so much engagement. I didn't make it halfway through the park before game over. It was the end of the day, and that was spectacular in and of itself.
Absolutely, yeah. I haven't seen the numbers from the city. I have heard that they estimate that they did have a lot more people there this year than they did last year. But this is my second year having a booth there for the campaign, but it's probably my 6th year attending the event, and they do a phenomenal job.
Kudos to those that make it possible. The City of Laramie, thank you for what you do in continuing a 35-year history of Freedom Has a Birthday in our community. What a wonderful. I remember Ruth Arthur. She was a owner of the Posy Patch and Fresh Flower Fantasy on Grand. Those that remember her knew what the Children's Parade was so meaningful to Ruth, and in our community has those memories and traditions. And I visited last year with Joe Shumway about some of that history and that legacy that comes into that event. And I'm pleased that it continues. I'm so pleased you to come into Studio 255 and visit with us about your experience there. Do you have one conversation over any other that stands out from your conversations throughout the day that you might like to share with our listeners?
You know, I think there were so many wonderful interactions. It was absolutely great. But when I'm out campaigning, when I have a booth and a table like that, I have a book that I bought in Philadelphia last summer that has a copy of the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and a number of other writings that are significant to our nation's history. I keep that on the table, and somebody picked it up and looked at it, and he goes, "How many times have you read the Constitution?" I said, "A number of times." He goes, "But don't you think that it needs to be reread, not rewritten?" And that kind of stuck out to me because I've heard that a lot over the past, a number of years. People have T-shirts that say it, etc. But a gentleman who is a Vietnam veteran who had served our country, had seen combat, and now is talking about the importance of our Constitution, which to me was significant because as an elected sheriff or a peace officer anywhere in the nation, you take an oath of office where you are sworn to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States and the state constitution of whatever state you're serving in. So I think it's important that people keep focused on that.
In today's current events, how would you reference the Constitution in enforcement of the responsibilities and duties assigned to Albany County Sheriff should you be elected?
I think first and foremost is it's our job to uphold that Constitution. We take that oath of office to uphold and defend it, to ensure that people's rights are not being violated, to make sure that officers, when they're out there, deputies, when they're out there enforcing the law, that they're doing it with fairness, with impartiality, that they're enforcing the law, that they're not enforcing personal beliefs or personal standards on people. That really that is our guiding document right there, and people need to be familiar with it and know what their job is and know how to uphold it.
Do you believe our Constitution needing to be reread, not rewritten, upholds the greatest level of humanity available in the world?
I do. I mean, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? That's what we're here for, and that's what we, as public servants, are entrusted to do, is to help people attain that.
When you started out your campaign, some said it was way too early. What do you say, having been on the campaign for 2026 election to this point, July 8th, what would you say to those folks that would say that in the community?
Well, I think the same people now are saying, wow, I can't believe that really it was the right move. I mean, we've been campaigning for 16 months. Through that, we've met a number of people in the community throughout the county, in town and in some of our remotest areas that we've been out and traveled to and talked to people there. I think that the name recognition has been huge because we started so early. But part of that, too, is I've been going to the county commission meetings, every meeting when I'm in town for the past 16 months, which has given me a pretty intimate knowledge of what is going on in the county, what the major issues are, and what I'm going to be facing if I'm elected.
How's preparation important going forward? What value do you give to training in our sheriff's department?
It's one of the most important things that we can do, right? And I kind of tend to follow a philosophy of we hire them right, we train them right, and we treat them right, and that helps with retention, right? But that training piece is so very important because we need to make sure that our personnel are up to standard on 21st century policing standards. Things have changed. Case law has changed significantly, even over the past 5 to 10 years, as to issues with use of force, tasers, all kinds of things. And if you don't have a workforce that is trained to the current case law, current standards, then you run the risk of bringing added liability to not only the department, but to the county and to the residents of the county. So training is very, very important. I believe that it's important to send people to train the trainer classes that we can then come back and have them as the experts to train the personnel internally. But I also think it's incredibly important with as long as the budget supports it, is to send people to outside trainings, outside areas, because they learn new ways there, and they might be able to bring back something that we hadn't thought about here that's being done in another area that really makes sense. It just hadn't been thought about. So plus the networking opportunities when you send people out for training. But my goal is to have one of the best trained workforces in the state of Wyoming. With that, the Wyoming Peace Officers Association has a program where you can pay $250 a year that then allows every member of your agency to attend free training. The Sheriff's Office had that before. About 6 years ago, 5 years ago maybe, they terminated that contract. $250 a year is nothing. I'd pay that out of my own pocket so that my deputies could receive, solid, realistic, ongoing training.
When it comes to your campaign thus far, I have seen you answer some tough questions. One such question was posed to you at the Progressive Voter Alliance of Laramie. Do you want to share? That meeting where you responded to question about ICE and your handling and your perspective on those surrounding areas of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you know, because you've been at some of those meetings, I'm not popular sometimes when I talk about certain issues, but I continue to go back because I want people to see that if I'm elected, it doesn't matter if we agree on everything or not. I'm going to be there. I'm going to listen. I'm going to discuss, and we can have open dialogue as adults about it. So I believe that every decision that is made should be done with the community's best interest in mind. Okay, this hot button topic of ICE, and right now the ACLU is suing Sheriff Kozak over in Laramie County for his agreements with ICE. To me, there's two completely separate arms of that topic, right? One arm is the 287G agreement, which is an agreement between local law enforcement and Immigrations and Customs Enforcement that allows local law enforcement to enforce immigration law. It's a 287G agreement, and there's three different parts, three different aspects of that. One is a jail enforcement model that deals with the custodial side of things in the detention center. The next is a warrant service officer, which deals with actually going out and getting federal warrants for these people. And then the third is the task force model, where you team up with immigration agents and you do enforcement, such as what Sheriff Kozak is doing with the Truck Around and Find Out, where he's doing enforcement on these illegal truckers, right? So 287G agreements is one side of things. I'm not in support of local law enforcement enforcing immigration law in the community. I think that it destroys trust with the community. So 287G agreement is over here, okay? Plus, even if I did agree with it, right now it's being litigated. It would not make any sense whatsoever to enter into agreement that's being litigated before it's decided, right? The second side of that is what's called an ICE detainer. Okay, and an ICE detainer is where a person is arrested for a violation of state law, whether it's DUI or murder, right? They're put into custody before they're released. If they're a foreign-born person, there's a requirement that you notify ICE. Okay? When you notify ICE of that, if ICE is looking for that person, they issue, if they've got what they'll do is they'll send the detention center an ICE detainer. And all it is, it's a request to hold that person for 48 hours, up to 48 hours, for ICE to come and take custody of them and then enter them into immigration proceedings.
Immigration Control Enforcement, what ICE stands for?
Yes. Yeah.
There you go.
And again, it used to be INS, Immigration Naturalization Service,
Right on.
and then it changed to ICE.
So you talked most directly. You only get 2 minutes.
Yeah.
In which at the PVA Laramie meetings, the third Monday of each month, 1402 Gibbon Street. That's a big candidate forum coming up with that
Monday
organization. It's an opportunity, but you only get a few minutes, and within that select time, you went right to the point, and you believe there's an element of greater safety.
I do. So currently, there's one sheriff in the state of Wyoming that does not honor ICE detainers, and that's the Albany County Sheriff. Only sheriff in the state that doesn't honor them. He'll release them back into the community, regardless of what their criminal history is. And his position on it is that it is a civil request. It's not a warrant. It's not criminal in nature, and therefore he believes that he doesn't have the authority to hold them for that additional 48 hours. Now, every other sheriff in the state of Wyoming doesn't agree with that, and they hold them. There's case law around the nation that is kind of split, but current case law supports local law enforcement.
So most recent case adjudication indicates that
local law enforcement can hold them for up to 48 hours. Yeah, it honors the ICE detainers. Now, bottom line, I tell people this every single day. I will follow the law. So if it ends up in front of the U.S. Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court says, no, it's not something that local law enforcement can do, I'll uphold it, right? However, the thing that I have the hardest time with is that there are groups running around yelling and screaming, we don't want ICE in our community. Okay? I agree 100%. We don't want to look like Minneapolis, but we won't, because we don't have that widespread violent crime, and that's why ICE went in there to deal with that. Separate issue that we could talk about some other time, but talking specifically about the ICE detainers is what happens when the sheriff releases somebody with an ICE detainer back into the community. They send a task force of ICE agents over from Cheyenne to come and find that person and rearrest them. Okay? So when you say, I don't want ICE in my community, yet you support a policy that actually brings ICE into the community, I think that's counterintuitive and counterproductive, right? To me, when you release that person back into the community, it creates greater liability for a number of reasons. Let's say that that person has a history of domestic violence. You release them into the community and they go back, and now not only do they go to their former partner or whatever and beat them up, but now they die. Okay? Now you have a homicide committed by a person who could have been in custody and was released into the community. I think that creates an undue liability on the county, on the sheriff's office, and it's just not right. We're here to protect the community. Another aspect to that is when a task force comes in and has to rearrest them, they're doing so in an uncontrolled environment where there's a much greater likelihood of there being intervention or a use of force. Okay? Whereas if we just did a simple transfer of custody from the detention center to ICE custody in a controlled setting in the jail, right, there's no likelihood of that happening. And the third piece of that is when ICE sends a task force over here and they're looking for somebody and they're seeing ICE agents run around, it creates fear in the community. And if all you have to do is look at some of these Facebook pages, rants and raves of Laramie, what's happening in Laramie, Albany County, Wyoming, those pages just go nuts if people in the community see ICE agents here, right? So it creates a fear, an unnecessary fear that we wouldn't need to have if we just did that direct transfer.
What would you say to someone who said timeliness of justice is an important aspect to living in America and being in America? It's a principle that we believe in. Is detainer of awaiting for an ICE detainer, is that timely? What kind of time frame is likely before the federal government is responsive?
So the request is to hold them up to 48 hours. It's not 48 hours that they're really being held. We have ICE agents over in Cheyenne. It would probably be a matter of hours, less than a day, before they came and took custody of them. So it's not like you're really holding somebody beyond what is reasonable or what the request is. And I would also say that if the request is for 48 hours and ICE says we can't make it in 48 hours, well, then you got to release them, right? Because that's what the courts have upheld as lawful, is that up to 48-hour detention. So
are releases also based on presumption of innocence?
So no, typically, I mean, everybody who's arrested is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, right? So some of these releases are on bond, on own recognizance. Some of them is they've served the amount of time that they've been sentenced to. So, for example, a probation violation where they might get a 3-month sentence, and now they've served that sentence and they're going to be released. But if there's an ICE detainer, then they should be turned over, right? So there's various circumstances that they would be released, and it's not necessarily on a presumption of innocence. It's based on statutorily guided release decisions.
Right. Are there other topics that you have encountered along the campaign trail as you visit? What are the keys that are of concern to the people of Albany County?
I've heard repeatedly that they want a leader who's actually going to do their job. And be accessible to the community. I can't tell you how many people who have called, texted, or sent me emails as recently as the day before 4th of July, saying that they have sent emails to the sheriff asking questions and never received a response. I've had people tell me that they've gone into the sheriff's office to volunteer their time and been completely blown off. That to me, that the sheriff is the chief law enforcement, or he's the chief law enforcement officer of the county. My thing is I will be accessible. People have my cell phone number. They can call me. If somebody sends me an email, I will respond. And that's something that I learned primarily when I was a public information officer and dealing with the media every single day, that there's only two things really that you need to be successful. And I think it applies here too, and that's relationships and being responsive to people. I've heard repeatedly that the relationship currently between the sheriff's office and other local law enforcement organizations, such as Laramie Police Department, University of Wyoming, maybe even the Highway Patrol, is not what it could be or should be. There are huge issues going on with that. There's no joint training going on together, and that to me is just absolutely ridiculous, because if there's any kind of major event that happens, it's going to require everybody to respond together. And if you haven't trained together, it's the likelihood of something going wrong is much higher. Some of the other things that I've heard people express concern on is the budget, and I think that's a huge concern, especially with the potential of the People's Initiative passing, and property taxes and revenue coming into the county could be significantly reduced. One of the things that is most glaring to me is the contract that was signed in December for the medical services in the jail. The contract was supposed to be $840,000 a year, that now has been raised to $901,000 a year. And it works out that we're paying more than double per inmate for jail medical services than what Laramie County is paying. Why is that? We need to be fiscally responsible. We need to be able to show our community that we're spending their money, our money, in the most responsible way that we can. And I think some of that is just having the knowledge and the experience to be able to go out and actually negotiate contracts, to do the work, rather than just take the easy way out, but to find what's going to be best for the county. We want the inmates to have appropriate medical care. We want them to have mental health services. We want them to have what they need, but we need to do it in the most cost-efficient way possible.
One topic that I've heard regards the addition of facilities, the need for detention, changes in the detention area. Are those things that you've heard, or do you have ideas where detention center itself is concerned?
I absolutely do. I think that, and the detention center is statutorily required in Wyoming for a sheriff's office, right? Believe it or not, there's nothing statutorily that says that a sheriff's department needs to have a patrol division. Okay. Now, we do need to have it because we have to serve the residents of our outlying areas. The Laramie Police Department's not going to respond to Rock River to take a burglary report, right? We need to have those services. But statutorily, management of a detention center is required. And there are issues in our detention center. We've averaged one death per year in the jail over the last 5 years. 3 of them suicides, 1 overdose, and 1 medical. That is about 3 times higher than the national average.
What's a medical? You just mentioned 3. Tell the audience what a medical is.
So somebody who has a pre-existing medical condition is brought into the detention center because
triggers
and something happens, right? They have a heart attack, they they have a stroke, whatever. But it's medical.
That's mostly
nature.
for my benefit, as I was trying to think, but I appreciate your clarification.
Yeah.
So detention center changes. What would you do as sheriff that would benefit Albany County?
So first and foremost, I would do a full-scale audit of the detention center. I'd have an outside agency come in, and there has not been an audit done in probably at least 10 years that I'm aware of. Definitely not within the last 6. So I'd have an outside agency come in and do a full-scale audit. I'd have them look at staffing. I'd have them look at the facility itself. I'd have them look at policies and procedures and see if we're up to standard on those. I'd have them look at what we're doing as far as inmate nutrition. So the state of Wyoming statutorily requires that we provide 3 nutritionally balanced meals a day. The federal standard is that 2 of those meals should be hot meals.
It's not three hots and a cot.
It's not 3
anymore.
hots and a cot. Now, there are agencies that do that. Laramie County Sheriff's Office provides 3 hot meals a day. We used to, and then was it a year and a half ago when the first property tax cut took effect?
It was a measure that was employed to saving.
Yes. And what they did now, they only serve 1 hot meal a day and serve sandwiches for lunch and dinner. So I personally don't know that a sandwich for 2 meals a day is nutritionally balanced. I think that you're creating more issues with health issues by doing that because of all of the preservatives and everything in lunch meat, etc. But regardless of that, the federal standard is 2 hot meals a day, and we're not doing that. So I'd have.
What's the average stay? What's the average length of incarceration for any individual?
I don't know. I can't answer that because it varies. I can tell you that the average daily population of the detention center is between 36 and 40.
And capacity is?
About 60.
Right, so we're about half.
Yeah. So
and are those budgetary items, are those contracted on full capacity, or regardless of capacity or occupancy, we pay the same either way?
Well, that's a good question, because when the sheriff's office sent out requests for proposals for bids for the jail medical, now mind you, the company that has the current contract was the company that had the contract that was signed in 2021. Okay, it's a 4-year contract, had a rider that if they felt that the company was doing a good job, they could extend the contract. For whatever reason, in around May of 2025, before the contract was due to expire, the sheriff sent out requests for proposal to see if there was something that was better. Okay, didn't receive any responses, so they had to extend the contract with Core Health. Didn't send it out again, didn't receive any. Essentially, in December of 2025, the sheriff brought 4 bids to the county commission to review. The sheriff was the person who had rated those bids and essentially selected the same company again. Okay, what didn't make sense to me was that when you looked at the 4 proposals, 3 of the companies submitted their proposals based off of an average daily population of 52 inmates. Significantly higher than what is there. At least one of those said that they would prorate it based on the actual daily population, but they went off of 52, and I couldn't figure out where that number came from, but the sheriff then said in a county commission meeting that their average daily population was 52, which is inaccurate. The 4th company did it off of a average daily population of, I believe, either 32 or 36, but significantly lower. And that's the company that got the contract. When you look at the new contract, it's 14% or more higher than the previous contract, and 43 or higher percentage of that is administrative in nature and not for medical care for the inmates. So one of the first things that I would look at is that medical contract and take a look. I think that it could probably be done for half the price. And when you're looking to save money, $300,000, $400,000 is a lot of money to save.
I read on your campaign materials in preparation for visiting with candidates like yourself, you have law enforcement experience outside of Wyoming, in addition to that in Wyoming. Do those years of experience lend to any different level of consideration or integration into potentially being Albany County Sheriff?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would tell you that I'm a cop first. I've been in law enforcement for 38 years. 17 of those years were in leadership and management positions. However, I've always been a cop first. And I think that's what the sheriff's office needs, is they need somebody who knows the job, understands the job, knows what their challenges are, and can help them navigate and work with those challenges. Of my 38 years, I've worked virtually every aspect of policing with the exception of riding a motorcycle, because that was the one thing that Misty wouldn't let me do. But I have worked gangs. Started in patrol. I worked patrol. I worked SWAT for 9 years on a regional SWAT team that averaged about 50 call-outs a year. This is back in the 90s. I worked gangs, vice, narcotics, homicide. I was a major use of force investigator. I've been a public information officer. I've worked with the Office of Independent Review and the first civilian police oversight board in Orange County, California. So through my time as the public information officer, I had some pretty high-level training. I'm a designated master public information officer by FEMA. Through that, I've responded on over 35 major disasters across the nation, including historic wildfires in California, Washington, and New Mexico, where I've led teams that handled the public-facing side of an incident management team, where we handle the public meetings, we handle all of the social media, all of the public releases of information. That's what I did on those disasters. Now, one thing that I had never done is work in a jail. had done it. It's one of the major aspects of being a sheriff, right? So I'm a reserve deputy with the Laramie County Sheriff's Office, and I've been spending my time in the jail so I can learn jail operations, because I believe that the leader of the organization needs to know what goes on, what they're responsible for, what their deputies are responsible for, and how to best handle that. So I've been doing all of those things so that I can be the best sheriff possible.
As July 21st approaches, that's the early voting start date for the August 18th Wyoming primary election period. Contested or not contested, what do you want voters to know going into July 21st?
So I want them to know that I am the most qualified, most experienced, most educated candidate on both sides. Now, I am unopposed in the primary, but I still think it's important that people come to the polls and they vote. I think that it is. I personally believe that people don't understand a lot of times that they can have a greater impact on a local election than they can in a national election. You know, they're deciding the leadership of their county. They're in this race for sheriff. They're deciding on the public safety of the community. And I think that, you know, from my perspective, people should be looking at the qualifications. They shouldn't be looking at the color of a person's skin. They shouldn't be looking at their religious background. They shouldn't be looking at their political party. Even though in Wyoming it is a partisan position, I think that the sheriff represents the entire community, not a specific political party. So in Wyoming, we have a closed primary, which means only, so I'm a Republican candidate, so I will be the only person on the Republican ballot. Aaron Applehans will be the only candidate on the Democratic ballot, right? But
so barring a write-in candidate for either party, you two will be on the November 3rd general election ballot opposing one another.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So one question that came in is in reference to synergy. Is it possible for budget savings to be economized by a joint law enforcement entity, which would perhaps unify Laramie PD and Albany County?
Yeah,
Sheriff's
absolutely.
Department.
Collaboration is key. Okay, it's a force multiplier. You get more work done. You also have better relationships that way. Now, I'm not talking about a joint police force, but certain aspects can be done jointly together. So, for example, currently the Laramie Police Department and Special Response Team, which is essentially their SWAT team, there's 3 deputies from the Albany County Sheriff's Office on that team. I'd like to see that expanded. The bomb squad through Laramie Police Department is a regional asset.
So there's collaboration with respect to different initiatives.
Correct. Yeah, and I think that there's a huge opportunity to do that in more areas. I really do.
So, great question from the audience. Thank you for bringing that in, and we appreciate you showing up to the Candidate Awareness Tour 2026. As we say, the campaign trail runs through our classroom, and this has been an enlightenment that helps us reinforce the importance of going to the polls informed. The best vote is an informed vote. We believe it wholeheartedly here at the Talk Shop. I am Eric Henderson in Studio 255 of the Laramie Plains Civic Center, and this morning's segment brought to us by I-80 Towing and Automotive Services, 3830 Cherrywood Loop East in Laramie, serving Elk Mountain, Cheyenne, and Laramie right here in the Gem City. That veteran-owned business, proud to bring you the Talk Shop. And our opportunity to visit with all candidates, all races, all levels of government continues now through November 3rd. Go ahead.
I'd just like to end with one thing, and it's a quote from Vince Lombardi, the former legendary coach of the Green Bay Packers, okay? And that is, perfection is not attainable, but if we chase perfection, we can catch excellence. And if you look at my website, excellence and the pursuit of excellence in law enforcement is one of my main goals when elected.
We thank you, Darren Wyatt, for Albany County Sheriff.